Hello, and welcome to my show, The Thriving Woman. I am your host, Carmel Austin.
Monday, another week, I can't believe I'm counting down the minutes till it's Tuesday. Another day back on.
I will be sharing keys to help you form healthy hearts and boundaries. I'll see you in the show. Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Thriving Woman. I am so thrilled that I have my beautiful friend and coach, Emily, with me today. This is season 4, and we are talking about stories that empower and thrive. It's been a journey and a half. Emily and I met more than 5 years ago, I'm sure now, when we were both doing our coaching degree with Kingdom Builders Academy. And I did like 12 months full on, went through everything, and then my dad passed away and I took a break. And in that process, I had the privilege of writing my story in my first book, Just Say No, and that's a co-author book with international women from around the globe who share their stories about how their lives have been empowered by the power of Jesus Christ. Then after that book, I jumped into doing my own co-author books, and I had many of our beautiful coaches who joined us from KBA, and they came on and shared their story in my book, The Artist Haven. And I had the privilege to illustrate and publish that book. And I had my beautiful partner, Stephanie, join me then as well. Then we went on to create our book in the series, Journey to Wholeness, Courageous Voices Unlocked. And that is a powerful book of women sharing their stories of overcoming. And how my podcast show came about, if you are just listening to me, because we are in season 4 now, out of Just Say No, I was offered to do a podcast show. And I took that up, and it was fun. It was exciting. And then when my dad died, like I mentioned earlier, I put everything into a sabbatical. Then I took on a VA, and her and I do my podcast shows as well now. So I'm very grateful to Donna, who continually supports me, gets all my podcast shows ready, puts them up on YouTube for me and on Spotify. So I'm very grateful to God, for the support of all the women around the globe who are with me, and particularly with Emily. I remember we used to spend a lot of time when we were working on our websites. I actually have a new website now, but when we were working in Kajabi together, Emily and I would come on and we'd be learning together about how to use Kajabi. But for myself this year, I launched out and I have a new website now. And so that is something that I totally maintain myself. And I had a lovely friend, Anne, who came on board. We became friends through the process. And she helped me revamp all my websites. So all of my beautiful books are on there. And I have my magazine as well, Mystery of Eden. And Emily has a beautiful story in there about her journey as a coach and her life. So if you haven't got our magazine yet, I would invite you to go on to Carmel's Garden, and you can click the link, and I'll put it in this podcast as well, where you can purchase that magazine and read Emily's story. And Emily joined with me last year with many women from around the globe to share their stories. And I'm running a little bit late, and Emily's been incredibly gracious. And I think this is our 4th podcast show that we're doing together, Emily. And on that journey, I know Emily has moved and I have grown and learnt. I've got another book coming out shortly. I've got a book called Adventure Cove. And that book is actually based on me as a little girl coming to the area where I live now at Jervis Bay and visiting and having holidays with my precious auntie, my Auntie Sal. And that's the first book in the series of my kids' book about a dolphin called Silver. And then I'm doing some personal writing as well as working with some clients with helping them write their stories. So, folks, as you're listening to us, I wanted to just share all that because I wanted to share how we need to pivot. We need to allow God to allow our journey to evolve. We, both Emily and I, have invested a lot of time and a lot of our money into the calling that God has on our lives. And it's just a privilege to sit down again with Emily. Emily is in the USA and it's summer for her and it's very hot. And for me, it's winter and it's raining here in Australia. But how blessed are we that we can meet on Zoom as sisters in Christ and share our story to all of you beautiful people who are watching or listening. I just feel so privileged again to have my beautiful sister Emily with me. Welcome, Emily.
Thank you so much, Carmel. It is such a pleasure to be on with you again, and I love your joie de vivre. I don't speak French, but you have such a joy for life and spunk and always looking for the new. And as you said, this series is about thriving, helping people to thrive and to empower them in their journey.
Absolutely. And folks, since Emily and I did our last recording, and I did actually release a podcast show this year with her as well, she has graduated as well with honours with a course that she was doing, I would say an associate diploma, but I'm sure Emily will correct me on the exact wording with that, with learning and growing. And if you haven't heard any of our podcast shows before, Emily and I have been talking about the power of healing, the power of our words, the power of standing strong even when we fall flat on our faces. And if you haven't heard some of the podcast shows before, I would encourage you to go back and find them. We are on Spotify and on my YouTube channel, Carmel's Garden. And Emily talks about the journey of healing and the things that have happened to her in her body and as she's grown spiritually as well. And so today we're going to be focusing a little bit more on her training and what she does now as a coach and who she is today in the woman that she is in God. So Emily, share a little bit about, I've seen all the amazing photos on online with the graduation, and I personally could have picked out half a dozen people that you graduated with that I knew that we went through Kingdom Builders Academy together. Share with me a little bit about that experience and how you feel God has placed you in all of that training and what you've done with life and where you are now.
Thank you. I'm always looking for areas for growth, and this was a wonderful opportunity that was offered to me through the Kingdom Builders Academy that we were a part of together. And it's actually part of a double degree program. So I'm now working on my master's in business and ministry. But this degree was very special because it focused more specifically on the ministry part. So it's a bachelor's in ministry from Vision International College and Seminary, and I just learned so much being under the tutelage of lots of amazing theologians throughout the ages. And one actually happened to be a pastor of mine from Los Angeles. Jack Hayford was had done some of the training, and it just was it was a wonderful achievement, and I felt very sparked to really focus some more on the ministry aspect. The Lord has wired me to evangelize. That's one of the gifts that I walk in. And so that comes naturally to me. But to go into this and learn more the academics and the empowerment through the Word of God and through ways of reaching out and applying that to business, being, business, we call it our business, I call it my business tree. And so we are all called to have an influence this side of paradise. And some of us think, we get into that old comparisonitis, but if God has called you to be a light just right in your neighborhood, that is the best place for you to be. It may be, in a college setting where you're teaching. It may be in, working in healthcare, whatever, wherever God calls you. So it was marvelous, and being able to link shields with others. Many had never earned a degree before, so that was just wonderful to witness that and be part of that. So I had already earned my bachelor's undergrad in Spanish literature and then graduate degree in occupational therapy. And somehow God allowed me to meld that together, So I used my Spanish in that too.
Wow. And isn't that amazing with the last podcast show that I put out, just recently as well? I was talking about that with Stephanie about the timeline with my kids' book, Adventure Cove. I wrote that story in 2013, and then I finished the rest of it over June and July this year, 2025. And then I'm just working on all the final details for the book to be launched. And she asked me about what questions do you want to ask. And as I started to sit down, there was this timeline of my life from a little girl to where I am now. And sometimes, things come up and there's a time and a season for them to come forth. And for me, I needed to publish a few books first and do my magazine and my podcast show and do my degree and become a wholeness coach and all of those things before, this book come out. And it's part of my heritage books that I'm doing. And it's very heartwarming, isn't it, Emily, when you see that what you've done before aligns with where you are now.
Mhm. Oh my goodness. And more, Carmel, I'm just seeing, as a matter of fact, I was on a prayer call with my son last night and my sister-in-law, and we were praising God for how he orchestrated things and even planned things before they have been manifest. We had talked about this special birthday card that I was going to send to my oldest daughter this week. And it's an interesting story about that because I chose a photo, photo card that my son had taken years ago. And it was very apropos for the message that I wanted to give to my daughter. And my son said, who would have thought that God would have had Kyle take this photo and make the card in preparation to send this very special message to my daughter. And I think that's really when we talk about messages that help people thrive. I think it's very important to just come back to that place and see that our God is an all magnificent God who planned things before we were even, birthed out of our mother's wombs.
Absolutely.
So,
And one thing I've
mhm,
been noticing too, that you might have a word, but it can take 10 years or more for things to come, or 20 years for it to come to pass. And that's okay because God's out of time.
that's right. Keep
And
opposite.
so, sometimes, last year I jumped into something and realised it was the wrong timing. But through it, I actually met Anne, who has helped me redo my website. So even though, I spent some money and that it is something I can take up later, but I look at it and now I'm helping get her mum's book published. So, I'm not going to look at it as a negative thing because I learned and I grew in that time and I can always take it back up again because it's there, similar to what you would be with KBA. You got lifetime access. But you still got to get on with your life and you still got to get on with what you're doing in this time in this season. And I think back and just go, the stories that empower and thrive. I feel like for years, I felt like that gift sat on the top of the shelf with the bow around it collecting dust for my life. And it's interesting that you said that about me. And I know Emily always listens to all my little clips on Facebook, and she's always making a comment in my group, and she's so encouraging personally to me. And I love that she's come on this journey and we've published her in my magazine, and that we're still on this journey together. And I think since my dad passed away, I've had four more aunties pass, three of his sisters, and then my mum's Auntie Sal, who I wrote the book about. She actually passed away like nearly 12 months ago now. So, it's a journey. We're on a journey. And I know that, as God accepts people into eternity, He's still fulfilling the dreams in my heart, this little girl's heart. And it sounds like the same with you, Emily, because I've never done degrees, but I've always done lots of things. I have done a degree in childcare, but that was many years ago. And then we did the degree with, well, it wasn't a degree, but we did our coaching with KBA and became certified. And we all can apply ourselves differently on the process of that. So, Emily, you shared with me as well that you are doing another certification. Share a little
Mhm.
bit about that and how that is impactful for who you are as a coach now.
Mm. I, since we have, since we did our last recording, I joined this wonderful opportunity to become a licensed Purpose Factor coach through the Purpose Company. And it has been so empowering because what I found is, there are different personality assessments and things that you can engage in. There's Enneagrams and there's Strengths Finder and there's the DISC assessment
Oh,
and
yes.
all that. The purpose factor does not compete with them. It actually melds beautifully with them, but it actually goes deeper. A lot of those assessments talk about your more about your strengths and your it talks more about your the purpose factor is more about your actual drive. And the others, talk more about kind of your strengths in the workplace and so on. So what this does is it looks at your unique strengths, your motivations, and your experiences. And it helps to clarify your core motivations and helps you in your decision-making process, no matter what you're doing. And it breaks it down into 4 different areas. There's your natural advantage, which has to do with the things that you do more naturally. It's kind of your innate role that someone plays in life and work. And it ties in with your curiosity. What makes you curious as a human being? And then there's the pull passion, which is another aspect of it. And that has to do with the problems that you are drawn to solve. For instance, I'm more inclined to figure out how I can bring people together. I've talked to you about this before, Carmel, that I'm kind of like a hub and a wheel, and I connect people. So for me, a problem to solve would be how can I get people motivated about around a similar, a similar goal. And so that's your pull passion. It's your conviction and what you're drawn to solve. And then there's the third part is your acquired skills, and that has to do with the talents and the expertise that you have achieved through education or experiences. Some people are self-taught, some do the formal education, and your life challenges. And the last one is the origin strength. And this has to do with overcoming some of the hard things. A lot of it pulls from things you've gone through in your childhood. And I know we've talked a bunch about this, Carmel, is, just things that we have endured throughout the decades have made us into the people that we are today. And we've talked about this. We don't want to waste anything, any of those challenges, any of the hardships, any of the losses, the tragedies, any of that. God uses in such a marvelous way to weave it all together for his glory. So I am using this as a licensed purpose factor facilitator. I'm using it now in my coaching program and folding that in, and also with the ministry. And it's just a beautiful tapestry that God has me on, this
Excellent.
journey.
And it's true, isn't it, Emily, that as we yield to what is planned for us, but then we still have what's in our hearts and our desires, and God brings them in a line with what is good and purposeful for us, we're able to rejoice even when there's sickness or death or loss or pain or things that don't go the way that we plan. We can still smile and be grateful and have a heart of purpose moving forward and thrive. And I know for me, last year when I was putting out my book, Courageous Voices Unlocked, I was very sick. It came upon me very quickly after I'd had quite a bad fall. And then I chopped my finger in the door. And then the magazine, that was a challenge to get that out. But it was just the grace of God and all the beautiful women like Emily who came around me and continued to support me and prayed for me and gave me space to do that. And then, my first dream with the magazine was that I wanted it to come out every 3 months, but I realised that that wasn't going to be practical or because I do all the work with it and I had to learn and do things. And yes, I did have a designer. I had 2 or 3 designers help me with that one, but I've got all the information ready for the next one. So I've decided with the magazine it's just going to be yearly. And then that takes the pressure off me as well. And this year I turned 60 and I have my 40th wedding anniversary as well. And, we're looking at some renovations in our home and hopefully, we want to do some travel as well. And so that's a lot of preparation. And then my kids' book, that's taken up a huge amount of time, as well as working with my clients. And then you know, Emily, we have a home to run, don't we, as well? And you know, we've got family and you know, responsibilities to be able to look after ourselves and rest and make sure that you know we thrive and we're not over you know, burning the candle at two ends. And I found that when I was doing the artist haven, because I had women from Germany and the Czechoslovakia, you know, it would be my afternoon and it was their morning. And then, you know, I was doing things very early in the morning and very late at night. And I had to really, when I did Courageous Voices Unlocked, I had to really do some more self-care. I had to go for a walk. I had to not just address stuff straight away. And, you know, when you're working with people as well, formatters from around the world, you've got to respect their time frames as well as people respecting my time frames. So, you know, in that whole process of, you know, stories that empower and thrive, we've got to continue to thrive. We've got to continue to do our own self-care, get out in nature and, you know, do those things. I know Emily loves to get out in nature like I do. You know, particularly in winter, I go outside and sit up the back when it's not raining. They've predicted rain all week this week here in Australia. And I like to, you know, take my shoes and socks off and do some grounding and walk around on the grass. And last year, my husband put a beautiful raised garden bed in, and we have snow peas reaching to the sky with lots of flowers. And I think I go out there and we pinch one or two off the vine. We've only brought a handful in so far because we eat them off the vine. They're taking their time to grow, but they look tremendous. They're big and green, and you know, we've got cabbages and parsley. Honestly, it takes up half the garden. It's just beautiful. And you know, so getting out there, and that green actually is my favorite color. That green, that all that beautiful you know, fresh herbs and plants produce, that's my favorite color, that green. The green, you know, the green of the grass and the green of nature, and it's so healing. And of course my name means garden, so for me to get out there and watch my things grow in my garden and eat the crops from my garden and walk around, you know, with my shoes off in the grass, it's so healing for your body. It's so healing for your soul, and so healing to just get out in the sunshine and be grateful to God that, you know, we can take time out, we can rest, we can restore our bodies, we can go to church, we can read our Bibles, we can go to home group, we can listen to worship, praise and worship, you know. And Emily, something for me too that's been really exciting, something very new. I've been wanting to be part of our ladies group again for a couple of years, and I just love women and I love to support women, and I have this opportunity where next week I'll be running a creative group. And, you know, I've met with my dear friend Donna. We've known each other for more than 30 years, and we're going to be running it together. We're looking at twice monthly where we can do some art therapy and we can do some art journaling and you know, and just come together and create and paint and just be with like-mindedness, because there's room for that for everyone. So this is a new journey that I'm on, you know, and I've had a few people go, but isn't that just another thing you're taking on? But I see it like, well, I'm getting out of the house, I'm doing something creative, I'm doing something very mindful that is healthy for me. And I'm sure, Emily, share with my audience, what are the things that you love? I know you love getting into nature. What is it that keep you thriving?
Well, you know, I wanted to just wrap in. I did not mention the definition of purpose through this this wonderful, empowering thing that I'm doing now, is that it is the best of what you have to help others. So that in and of itself is empowering because we have the best in us. It's a matter of drawing that out through various means. And it could be engaging in something that just calms your soul on a regular basis. You know, for me, I say, nature is a love language for me. It's not, you know, there's the five love languages. So a bunch of people have read that book, which is marvelous. But I say nature is a love language for me. And I was just sharing with you before we got on that a neighbor called and said that she woke up at 5 in the morning and looked in her driveway and there was a black bear there, and then she saw it go on my property, and I just I just sparked, you know, lit up because I love just looking out this morning and seeing the baby bunny on my lawn, the rabbit, and then the turkeys coming by, and so it's just you know, going out and just sitting and pondering and just being quiet before the Lord and looking. I love to be on a treasure hunt, Carmel. I love to go whatever I'm doing in the day, say, okay, what am I going to look for today? It's kind of like being a little child and having that anticipation. I love to get on my bicycle and just go biking. I love to go out in the woods and hike with help from people, so you know I can really just do it more rigorously. I love to go to the ocean and swim in lakes, and yeah, a lot of things to just really minister.
Yeah, and you know, it's so important, it is, isn't it, Emily, that we need to be taking that time out for ourselves, that we need to be thriving and not just surviving. And we need, and our stories are here to empower my audience, to encourage them that, you know, that not to get lost in, yes, we've all got lists and jobs and things that we want to do, but it's okay. Like, I've slowed right down. I've slowed down, and you know, and I'm just pacing myself these days now, and I'm learning to be okay about when mistakes get made by me or others, and know that they can be, excuse me, corrected, and just learning to go, it's okay. You know, slow your mind down, and it's okay to rest. And you know, with me living with Irlen syndrome, my mind, and ADHD, my mind can go 100 miles an hour. So, you know, for me, it's, if it's cold, getting under a blanket and finding a really good movie that I can watch, or making sure I take my dog for a walk out in the sun through the day in winter, or, you know, connecting with like-minded people who are going to pray with you or encourage you. And so, you know, we've got to find all those things. I love to walk on the beach as well. And, you know, and just spending time with my grandchildren and family. So, you know, all of these things, I want to encourage you all who are listening to us that, you know, it's great, isn't it, Emily, to get degrees. And it's great to see that God uses those gifts in our lives where we are, you know, growing and learning and thriving and helping others as coaches. But it's the most important thing, I believe, is that it is knowing who we are in the Lord, and knowing that we are his daughters, and that we are perfectly designed and made in him, and that all of those gifts inside of us come forth as we plan and grow and work and get beside others that are going to encourage us on that journey. So, you know, today I just want, you know, to encourage those who are listening to us that life is a journey. And for me, you know, I'm now in my 60s, and I go, how did I do that? You know, I got some of my friends from school saying, you know, we're in the elite 60 group. And I'm like, what's that? I'm like, how did I get to this age? But hey, praise God, I am at this age and I'm healthy and thriving and growing and learning and allowing Him to continue to, break down those walls of pain and disappointment where things may haven't gone the way I planned them to, and being willing to lay that down and continue to move forward. And I know when I first started out with KBA and Emily, I just had this dream inside of me that there was more. There was more to share, there was more to write, there was more to learn, there was more to grow with. And I still want to keep on doing this for another 10 or more years. So we need to do our self care. We need to make sure that, we are thriving today, because today is what we're promised, isn't it?
That's right. That's all we have, Well, of course, we have the past, but that's gone.
Yeah.
We can remember the past, but we have that's what I'm often saying to people. We have not seen this day before. 5 minutes from now, we haven't seen it yet. So we can choose how we're going to, to live and to anticipate, and whether to carry, thoughts of that pull us down, or thoughts that bring life to us and blessing. So you just reminded me, it's a pace of grace, Carmel, that we are all have an opportunity to take part in. And when we think about grace, boy, the Lord Jesus is the master of grace. He gives us the grace to carry the grace in whatever we're doing, the challenges, the highs, the lows. So,
Absolutely. And I trip up all the time. And then I've got to go, oh, that wasn't very exalting of the Lord, or I was allowing my old nature, Carmel, to rise up, or my hurts, or my inner critic. And so then I need to work on that, and I need to work on, calming her down and not allowing that to come up, but know that God's love can wash over me and give me a purpose for today, and give me a purpose for what He's given us in the future. And Emily, hasn't 5 years gone by very quickly?
breath of a time. Absolutely.
In the time that we first started on this journey together to where we are now. Emily's gone on her journey and I've been on my journey, and we just thank God for the influence and the privilege to speak and share. So thank you, Emily, for coming again and chatting with me about life and the journey of life, and how God is using where you're training and growing and learning and helping with your clients. Because Emily, she's a caregiver coach, and it sounds like, she's going into real depths with this new course that she's doing. So anyone that works with Emily, I am sure that you will just be blessed. You will receive great encouragement, because she's always careful about the words of her mouth. And when you hear a little bit more about Emily's story, she is just a woman of faith, of grace, and a woman who, despite the difficulties of the past, she wakes up with newness in her heart to trust that God is with her in the plans that she has for the future. And I feel that there may be some women or some families who are listening to this, and they need that encouragement. They need that encouragement that Emily and I are just, women. We haven't, we might have titles, but they're because, we've set the course to go about doing things that are in our hearts. So if you have a dream, a plan in your heart, or you need some coaching, you need some support, we are here to support you on that journey. If you have a story inside of you and you want to write it and you don't know what to do, I'd love to help you with that. I love helping people be able to get their stories and, rewrite their inner story without the guilt and shame, as well as if they want to, then going on to having it published. And it's a process. And I know Emily, as a caregiver coach, she's there supporting all of those people. And then, she's always adding things on the journey with her and her experiences. So she's got lots to share with you as well. So thank you again, Emily, for joining me on another episode of The Thriving Woman. And I'm going to say today, I'll see you all in another episode. God bless for now.